There are around 2,500 billionaires in the world, and about 70% of them have got a college degree at least as a minimum. So it means that education is really important. But then critics would argue that the remaining 30% who are also billionaires don't even have a college degree. So is education really that important in becoming rich and successful? Now, education will improve your chances of becoming that. But there are two other factors that are really important to make sure that when used in combination will make you rich and successful. Now, I'm going to talk about those two towards the end of this video. So hang around to find out more. But before we talk about that, let's talk about education in a little bit more detail. Now, education was introduced in India, the English education system that we know as of now, back in the 1830s. Now, in 1830, there was this Britisher by the name of Lord Thomas Babington Macaulay. Now, he introduced this English education system to India because when he visited here, he thought that India was both intellectually and culturally inferior, and it needed this education system to fix it. So he obviously brought in the English education system here, and some of the initial subjects taught back then were science and mathematics to begin with. Now, before that though, ancient India used to have the Gurukul system of education. The Gurukul system meant that if you wanted to be educated, for example, or if the parents wanted their children to be educated, they would approach these gurus and request them to be taught by them. And if accepted, then they moved into the gurus' houses and stayed with them for years. Now, through those years, these gurus actually imparted their knowledge to all of these students. These students stayed with the gurus for as long as they thought they were okay and they were satisfied with the education that they got, or up until the guru thought that, look, I've taught you everything I know, and so I have nothing more to teach you. But while that was the case, the main aim of the education system in ancient India were these few. So firstly, they looked at developing a person's character. Secondly, they taught them to master the art of self-control. Thirdly, they brought about social awareness. And finally, they taught them to conserve and take forward the ancient knowledge and culture of the country. A stark difference between how the education system is today. Today, the education system has become like a business, so to speak. Anyways, we've already established at the start of this video that having a college degree are going to increase your chances of becoming rich and successful. So if that's the case, then what college degree should you get? More specifically, what college should you go to and which degree should you get? Let's break that down. First of all, what college should you go to? Now, if you want to be rich and successful, obviously you want to choose the best college, right? Because the chances of success then are better. But is that really true? Let's look at a few examples. Some of the top schools in the country, which are the IIM and the IITs. Now, these institutions seem to produce the top cream of the crowd year on year. People that pass out from these institutions tend to be rich and successful by default. So is it really that the education system and the knowledge that's imparted in these institutions is so superior that anyone that goes through there is guaranteed for success? Not really. So let's look at that a little bit deeper. Now, the success of these institutions actually comes down to the fact that they've got this really stringent entrance exam. IIM, as an example, has CAT. So if you were to apply into an IIM, you would have to clear the CAT exams or their entrance exam. And even if you were, say, 95th percentile as a result of that entrance exam, the chances of you getting into IIM would still be very dim, even at 95th percentile. Now, you may get into some other top B schools, but to get into IIM is even more difficult. In some cases, you would have to probably be the 99.5 or 99.7th percentile in order to get an admission in one of these IIM institutions. So you see, these institutions are actually hiring students that are already brilliant and intellectual. Now, they then put them through their education system. But these students were destined for success regardless of whether they took a course with IIM or not. So if you are one of those students, for example, that is the 99.7th percentile or above, then why not? You can go and join these institutions, because let's face it, there is something that you do learn from there. So let's not take away all of the credit from them. But for the rest of us that are probably average or maybe below average, what do we do then? Which college do we go to? Now, my recommendation is that do some research. Whether you've just finished your schooling and trying to get into college, or maybe your children are in college, or maybe some of your family members are trying to get into college. Do some research and find out a college where the improvement in a student's intellect from when the time that they got in to the time that they actually got out was really drastic. Those are the colleges that you want to look for. To give you an example, in the movie Tare Zameen Par, for example, this kid is dyslexic, right? But he gets into a normal school. But with the right attention, with the right time and effort provided by one of his tutors, he actually ends up acing this whole school system. So look for a college or a school that actually is interested in spending that time and effort with their students to make sure that they drastically improve in brilliance and intellect by the time they pass out as compared to when they came in. Those are the colleges. So they could be your IIMs, they could be your any other normal college, it could even be a government college. If you think that they fit the bill, that's the college you should be choosing for yourself. Coming to what degree should you take? Now, some of us are really clear right from the beginning in terms of what specialization we want to do. For example, getting into a medical field or the engineering field. And if that's the case, that's great. But for most of us, it's a really confusing time because, there's a lot of choice around us. There are so many successful people in so many different fields, and so you really don't know which one you want to take. In which case, I would advise to take these career tests. Now, these are tests that they take where they ask you a few questions, and then based on the answers that you provide, they will then let you know where your interests lie and what are the areas that you will do good in, and probably give you a few recommendations in terms of, hey, these are the few courses that you could potentially take up. I did a similar career test when I had passed out my 12th years ago, and based on the results, they had suggested that your interest seems to be in the graphic designing area, so you could pick up something there, but you're also really good with numbers, so you could pick up like a commerce field as well. Now, it's a different story that I didn't pick either of those, but maybe for some other day. So I would recommend that if you're really confused about choosing which field you want to get into, take one of these tests, get as much guidance from around you to then choose and decide. Because you don't want to have a complete mismatch between, let's say, what you did for your bachelor's and then what you do for your master's. In most cases nowadays in the corporate world, as an example, there's hardly any connection between what we did in our bachelor's versus the work that we do today. In fact, chances are that the work that we're doing today don't have even any courses available in any universities, or maybe they didn't have any courses available at the time when we joined college. Nevertheless, those are the two ways that I would recommend how you choose a college degree, both which college and which degree. Now, what about the rest of us that have already finished our college? Maybe we made some bad choices. Now, all is not lost because, like I said at the start of the video, there are two other factors which are really important. I would say a little more important than even education, that decide whether you will be rich and successful. It's a common trait found amongst the rich and successful people. So what are those? Now, the first is to find your unfair advantage. There's a whole book written on that subject, by the way, so if you get a chance, go read it. But what does that mean? In simple terms, every human being is unique because of the situation that we're in, because of our upbringing, because of the place we lived in, the place we were brought up in, the friends we have, the family we have, the education that we possess, the interests that we have, so on and so forth. And so all of these things combined makes every individual unique. So find out what makes you really unique. Find out what's the most unique thing about you that no one else in the world can offer. Now, once you found out what your unfair advantage is, the next thing to do is to figure out how you will monetize that. Let me give you an example. Let's talk about influencers, for example. Now, influencers have an unfair advantage because they've got a huge number of followings, some in thousands and some in millions, for example. But no two influencers have the same exact followers or subscribers. So if two influencers have both got 1 million subscribers, it's not that the exact same 1 million people are following or subscribed to both. So that makes them unique, and that is their unfair advantage. Each of them then figured out how to bring value to these subscribers and followers, and in turn monetize that and make some money and become rich and successful. So that's my advice in terms of whether education is important or not. So don't go by these things that you hear that, hey, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of college, and so I'm going to drop out of college and become successful. That's not really true. It is an integral part of being successful and rich, but that alone will not guarantee success. You have to use it in combination with these other two things that I talked about: finding your unfair advantage and then figuring out how to monetize that. Let me know in the comment section whether you agree with this or not, and I'll see you in the next video.